Very welcome. So I thought we'd start with a bit more detailed introduction, and I'm probably going to hate you for this. But I have 3 questions for everyone. So tell us a bit about what your company do and what specifically your responsibilities. So that's not what your job title is, like what do you do with your days, what do you do for fun, and the best one, what's something you report that don't like you. So I figured that since I'm a president, so I should probably do it for myself as well. So we're an early stage startup building team coordination software. I'm co-founder and CEO, so that means I do DevOps, IT, customer development, customer support, and a bunch of other stuff. For fun, I have a 3-year-old daughter, so we love playing Lego and I like to go running. And we're a pretty open company, but while my reports probably know that I like taking hot baths to relax, they probably don't realize I have a bath bomb subscription from Lush. So now you all know that as well, which is awesome. Right, back to you, Rolf.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everybody. My name is Rolf. I'm with TradeShift. We connect companies and allow them to do trade, support all their business processes. What was the second part here? My responsibilities. So SVP of Engineering, high level, our staffing, then we write code, write products, work with products, strategy of the company, make sure the damn thing's running is part of what I do. Work with all my wonderful engineers on my team, also when they're not so wonderful. It all comes with the turf. What I do for fun, I live here in the Bay Area. I have 2 kids too, around the same age as Alan actually. My daughter started school this week too. That's a major milestone for her. And so I spend time with them when I'm in the country, when I'm in the city, because we have engineers here, Copenhagen, Bucharest, Novosibirsk, Shanghai, so we get to travel quite a bit. One thing that my reports don't know about me is probably the amount of Netflix binging that I managed to sneak in. But please don't tell me that.
Alright, thanks. How are you, Maria?
That's good. It's a common thing. So I'm Maria. I run engineering at Omadahealth, and we are in digital therapeutics, and so we aim to cure the world of prediabetes and diabetes. It's exciting new area of the digital therapeutics in healthcare, which actually makes the running engineering very interesting, and so you become both a recruiter and a wrangler of like healthcare regulations, and help desk, and setting strategy, and working with different agencies all at the same time. So the job never boring, and quite interesting, and in some respects you invent it as you go. So I actually struggled with saying like what exactly, like how do I define my job, and I think it really truly varies from day to day. In terms of the fun, similar situation, I have a 9-year-old, and so one of the things that we really like to do is, we don't do Legos, but we do puzzles. And so that's how I spend my evenings after I come home from work. And my dirty secret that the reporters don't know, it is Netflix, but I also, while I did that Netflix, I tried to different meditation apps, and none of them worked for me. And so I took up knitting, and it actually works than I have like while I watch Netflix. And I might have like sweater or scarf as a side benefit, so we'll see.
Hi everyone, I'm Souvik. I run engineering for Zenefits. We are a SaaS company. We build software for small, medium businesses to help their HR, payroll, and benefits administration. So as part of my role, I'm kind of like you, Maria, do a bunch of different things on a day-to-day basis, help build products, retain, recruit people, keep the site up sometimes, figure out security issues, work with the product, talk to customers, just whatever the day brings, really. Bulk of my time, of course, is about hiring, mentoring, and retaining people, so that's a lot of my time. Interesting thing about me.
What do you do for fun?
Oh, what I do for fun, I guess. I am a huge fan of building Legos with both of my kids. I have 2 boys, so really enjoy building Legos with both of them. And a thing that I do that my reports don't know, that's interesting. I got hit by a car twice. Not the same car, but, but
worries. So we also wanted to know a bit about your, so we can like phrase the conversation for you. So if you can put your hands up, if your company is in these ranges, so under 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, 200 to 500, 500 to 1,000, and then 1,000 to 10,000, anyone at 10,000 plus. Very cool. And who is currently in a leadership role? Right, cool. And who hopes to move into a new role within 18 months? And who understands what is expected of them to get to that next role? So hopefully these three can help you out on that question. So I think we're going to start with Rolf. What does it actually mean to optimize career growth? Is it getting promoted? Is it having a title? Or is it something else?
So I think that's a very individual question, right? And you need to figure that out with yourself. What is it that you want? Do you want the money? Do you want the influence? Do you want the title? Do you want the recognition? What is it that you want? And I think Alan had the you got to map out and recognize where you want to go with yourself. And to me, a lot of it is also, to some degree, opportunistic, right? I mean, see what happens around you and see how you can contribute. And I truly believe that the best things that can happen for you come because you can make a positive difference in that situation, right? And that will take you ahead or further.
Do you have anything to add?
I would say that it's the one thing I would add is optimizing career growth kind of depends on where you are at a given point in time, and that itself can change as you move ahead in your career. Sometimes you optimize for different levels as you move up, or sometimes you optimize for lateral growth. Maybe you're picking up a different skill or a different competency at different parts of time. So it's kind of very situational and very personal, and it changes as you move ahead in your career.
So yeah, Souvik, since you've got the mic, do you think it's better to be promoted into a senior role at the company you're currently at, or to be hired in a higher position in a job transition?
All of these questions, I would say, is very kind of personal, where what you feel comfortable with. I personally would generally opt for moving into a senior role at a given company, because at that point, some of the complexities are known complexities. For example, the people are known, maybe the domain that you're operating in are known, the challenges are known somewhat. So it just helps to kind of build confidence in that senior leadership role and around your peers a little bit easier. Of course, if you really get an amazing opportunity at some great company and you want to take that shot, you should be open for it. Kind of depends on where you are in your life.
Just in case there's sometimes you are in your position and there might not be an immediate and very feasible way to get into a different position based on where the company is. And so, while I agree generally, it's probably more comfortable to get with the same company where you are. It has its own benefits if you come in and there's some sort of a clean slate of sorts. And you can also offer fresh perspective. There's a lot of newness, there's a lot of fresh ideas that you can bring to an organization, so I wouldn't let that stop you.
And Maria, do you have any advice? I was talking to someone recently who kept getting promised that they were going to get promoted to manager in 18 months, and 18 months kept moving on and on and on. How long do you think someone should wait to see the company, loyalty and everything, and job hopping? Do you have any opinions around that?
I would really try to understand why those 18 months keep moving, and sometimes if there are truly really valid reasons, say, I've seen situations where somebody gets promised by one manager, then the manager leaves, and the new manager comes in and is I really don't know what to do with this because I don't know what was promised to you. That's fair game. But I would try to really dig in and to understand why it's moving and whether that's actually the person is being passed over, but their management doesn't have courage to tell them that, or if there's changes in the company, or there's other reasons to believe that it will not happen in a reasonable time frame, and then you make your choices from there. But I would really dig into the true reasons for the changes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really depends on the company also, right? Understanding, does the business context change? Is this because what you're doing is immensely valuable and you're making a difference in your current role? Then maybe your growth can be, your need for growth can be, satisfied not necessarily by a title change or direct reports, but increased compensation, increased sphere of influence in other ways. You can have that conversation. If it's the same situation, the same business context, it's and your management, as you say, doesn't have the courage, then it's the introspect part, right? I mean, understand yourself and be honest with yourself enough. Are you the right person in the right position? Is this right environment? And ultimately, I think it's do you trust the environment that you're in? And ultimately, I think everybody should have good and happy lives, right? And if you're in a bad environment, break up before you break down, something like that.
So that's probably a good segue to the next section, which is talking about the environment and the conditions for growth. So people probably don't really understand or know what to look for in the conditions that are going to help them progress in their career. Souvik, do you want to talk about what some of the conditions you think are necessary for personal growth and career growth?
Yeah, I think Alan talked a little bit about alignment. I think it's really important wherever you are working that there's alignment with your core set of values to where you're working at. And if you fundamentally feel misaligned to what you're doing, either it's misaligned with your passion or interests or culture or set of values, then that's probably not the best place to stay. I would also think that it's really important to feel that I am or you are learning and growing in whatever way it's possible, and have that time span. If it's 6 months and you're doing the kind of same job that you've been doing for the past 6 months, then maybe you should revalue your position. Sometimes that 6 months goes into a year, depending on the size of the company and how fast the company is growing and all of that. But learning and growth is super important, and alignment of values, I would say.
Maria, what about you? Can you tell us about the conditions where you experienced the most growth?
For me, this was any time that the company was going through significant change. And it actually happened to me several times. And a couple of times there was really happy change and the company was growing. There was a time when the company was also contracting. And so you learn a lot about yourself and how you handle crisis situations. But in both cases, it was being placed in unfamiliar territory, and a territory that stretched me, and a territory when I wasn't initially feeling comfortable. And so I'd say that sometimes whether change is positive or negative, it's like you grow. And this is something when you come back and this is something that makes you stronger. This is something that kind of goes into your bank of experiences.
So chaos is a ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah, chaos always brings about the opportunity for change, right? I think, to me, as Jerry was kind enough to say, I've kind of grown from being an individual contributor to where I am now in the same company, and I think I've always wanted to be part of the decision making, understanding what's going on and so on. But it's like, did you really want to take? I forget which was it, the red or the blue pill, right? I mean, did you actually want to see the truth? Because as there are peaks and valleys in any company's business context, and the more you know about it, sometimes the less you wish you knew about it, right? And so if you really want to get promoted into a higher position, you also have to be prepared and say, well, there are going to be strides when I am going to do my job well. I am going to be the one that has to power through and motivate my people and, say this, we will make it, this will go well, and, we will continue being, right? And so that perseverance part, I think is linked to that.
I think it also becomes like, this is the moment where alignment to your core values becomes especially important, because I feel, at least personally, you can persevere through a lot of stuff. You can be resilient, but in order for it not to break you or chip away from you, but actually make you a stronger individual. It has to align, can't go against your core values. Like that was some of the things that I find as the most important things for leaders.
So psychologists would say that you can't grow without failing. So a prerequisite for growth is to have an environment where you can fail safely. How do you support the growth and failure of leaders within your organization? Maybe each of you can talk to this from your business, like you, Souvik.
Sure. One of the techniques, by the way, I completely agree. One of the core tenets I believe is if you're not making mistakes or failing, then you're probably not stretching yourself in whatever dimensions you might want to think about. So it's really important to stretch and kind of feel a little bit sore in your muscles, because that helps to grow. That helps you to grow. In terms of tactics, we have a very well-defined goals and OKR mechanism that we leverage, and some of the goals are actually earmarked as stretch goals, and it's known to the employee and the manager that these are stretch goals. So there's not a whole lot of downside to not hitting those stretch goals, but it's an opportunity for certain employee to kind of go above and beyond to hit those.
Maria, how do you balance business goals and individual needs in these cases where failure and stretch is necessary?
I think the key is, it's a little bit of a fluffy answer, but I think the key is not to make sure that the failure is not going to be catastrophic to the person or the company. And so as the leader of that team, as the leader of that person, I think it's upon us to figure out what that balance is, and then also making sure that if something happens, you can actually catch them. So if you feel that the risk is something that you also won't be able to compensate for, I will revisit that. And that creates that space where it would be, in a healthy way, uncomfortable for the person, yet you know that they can do it, and if they can't, then somebody's going to catch it. So it's not going to demoralize them.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I have it. I firmly believe that you have to give people the space to fail and support them through that. And as long as they're trying and they have the best intentions, I think that you should find a way to support, continue to support them, right? When I took over the leadership of engineering and Tradeshift, I was also finding a management team in one of our locations, and I appointed a super young person into a fairly senior level of management because I saw a lot of energy, and I thought, this person can really grow to that. And a week into that transition, he basically came and said, "Look, I'm having nervous breakdowns. I can't do this." And at that point, of course, you have to bear that responsibility and say, "Okay, that is not the intention. I mean, we're not here to break you. We're gonna, we couldn't undo that change because the previous job he had now somebody else had, right? But you need to find a way then to navigate that in a way that everybody leaves that situation. He's still with us, by the way. So eventually it worked out for him.
Okay, cool. So transitioning on to being a leader, and this actually touches on the top question that is on the board over there. But what are your opinions on whether engineering leaders should code? It's a very hot topic.
It is a hot topic, and I was thinking about before also, the subject matter as an engineering leader, the thing that is getting done is engineering, and you need to be able to understand that to some degree, right? I think I need to be able to understand at a fairly good level what even the senior engineers in my company are talking about. Not because I need to weigh in or be an expert in their conversations, but at the end of the day, there might be a prioritization question that comes to me, and I need to understand what the ups and downs are. One of the things I'm enjoying is actually taking part in our production incidents. Also, don't tell that to our engineers because they'll want me to be more of them. But if everything is burning, it's a really good place to understand what's going on. I think your profession changes. Right? I'm a leader and I'm a manager, and that's my profession now. I'm not an engineer. I haven't said that out loud before, so that was a little bit coming out. But that's yeah. So I think that's a change.
How about you, Maria? Do you think it's important to stay technically relevant and involved in low-level decisions?
I think it is. I think it changes depending on the size of the organization, and this is something also, at some point there's only so many hours in the day, and the choice, one of the reasons I was so curious about like what size of the organizations are in the room is that there's, depending, like in a startup, you probably can get away with being technical all the way to the top tier, and you will find time, and it actually is very, very important, so you don't feel selfish about devoting time to the upleveling yourself technically. If you are in a Fortune 50 corporation, that probably is not going to be the case. And so, depending on, I would also look at, like, when you look at companies, when you try to see where you want to be and how you want to balance being hands-on versus not hands-on, that would be something that I would definitely look at as part of how I'm going to be able to spend my time and what's going to be important.
You, Souvik, how do you do this in Zenefits?
I think it's really important to stay technically relevant because at the end of the day we are leading engineering organizations, and it's important to have respect in the organization that you're leading. So the difference I would say is, when you're an engineer, you're actually dealing with bits and bytes at the absolute tactical ground level. And to your point, Maria, about the size of the company and the size of the organization that you're leading, becomes very, very difficult if you're running like several tens, hundreds of employee-sized companies. But you got to understand architecture, you got to understand major decisioning and how that impacts product and how that impacts rollout and deployment, go-to-market. So it's very important to stay technically relevant. You have to kind of make a judgment call on what projects you do that and how deep you want to go and stuff like that. That's kind of my opinion.
So Rolf hinted at the difference between the IC and the manager role. But this is going to be a question for Maria to start with at least. But what about the difference between managing ICs and managing managers? How did you navigate that transition? What advice would you have for folks in the room who are going to start managing multiple levels of leadership?
I think the biggest gotcha for me was how it was actually communication, had nothing to do with engineering. And it was how whatever I was saying is being internalized and then messaged from a set of people to a different set of people. And the bigger the organization, the more the levels, the more sophisticated communication feedback loop you need to develop. And that's something like I wish I knew going in. I would have saved myself so many scars. But that's probably like once you figure that out, as well as setting really clear expectations, and then speaking of communication, making sure that people have the same, like they heard the same thing that you were saying or you thought you were saying, is probably the biggest key to being successful in that. The other thing that may or may not come naturally to people, and if it doesn't, something to work on, is you kind of have to let go, because the people that you've hired and the people that are now leading those teams, they also have ideas, they also have a way of doing things. It will probably be different from yours, and in some cases it will probably be better than what you had in mind. And as long as you set those expectations and you're clear about like the final outcome, giving them enough leeway to get to it in a different way is really important, both for their growth, for their organization, and for your sanity.
So Rolf, you've gone through this transition and trade shift. How do you help other people who are coming up the ladder behind you?
So I think a lot of that is about recognizing who it is that can propel trade shift forward, right? Because that's ultimately a big part of my goal of what I need to do. So understanding who brings a lot of energy and passion for what we do and what they want to contribute with, and seeing that. And another thing is, of course, also skill set and competencies. And frankly, I've had people come and say, look, I think I kind of should be manager at this point in my career now. I'm like, look, I'm sorry, but that's not who you are. You might be super good technically or in other ways, but you're not a manager. And I think a manager and a leader, a lot of that is about being able to influence other people, get them aligned on the same agenda, listen to the best ideas and so on. And that is also not for everybody, right? And instead you might be saying, well, here's a growth path on the technical side. And sometimes it's also just about saying, maybe you have come to the end of what we can do for you and you can do for us at this particular time, and that's not necessarily a sad departure.
Anything to add, Souvik?
I completely agree. I think, most tech companies that I've been part of, and certainly in the valley out here, fortunately, you have a dual career path. You have an individual contributor career path that can, you can pretty much earn the same compensation and influence and impact as a manager or a leader. So I think we are fortunate to live or work in an industry like that. Generations before us were not that fortunate because, the industrial sector was very different than the sector that we operate in. So I think we're fortunate in that. So we have to make a path at some point in time, whether it's an individual contributor track or professional leadership track. But you're right, management and leadership is not for everyone.
So when I was asking folks offline what they wanted to hear from you all, one of the common questions was around just how you get shit done. It seems like the more people you manage, the higher up in the organization you go, just the busier it gets. So how do you carve out time for strategic thinking? How do you communicate with people? How do you collaborate? How do you make time for events like this when you're so busy? Share your secrets.
I'm very brutal with blocking my calendar. And I actually make sure that this happens, and unless something is on serious fire with flames, I honor what I plan to do when I block my calendar. So that works about 50% of the time. Sometimes, there's no fire, there's no flames, but something I get sidetracked, but at least with the other 50%, that's probably the most effective way of me to get ahead.
Souvik, any hacks?
I wish I had a perfect answer to that. I think it's, some days it's good, some days it's not as good, right? You plan your week, I tend to block some hours out every day, at least an hour out every day to set aside for me. But sometimes it just doesn't work because the fire of the day or what have you catches up. I do think that it's important if one as a leader is constantly firefighting, then that's a sign of something not working well. Either in the team that you have hired, or certain leaders that you have hired, or the structures and the processes that are set up. So there's inherent weakness in the operation or management or the structures. If you're constantly firefighting, then something is off. So that's a definite indicator that something is off.
So how about specifically breaking away from the tactical, you guys as well? How do you find time to be strategic when there are so many fires? Is it always something that can bring attention?
Sometimes you don't. I think it's part of the answer. I think I've had many days of just back-to-back half-hour or 15-hour meetings and conversations, and at the end of the day you go, oh boy, should I go to Europe soon because then I have a flight that will allow me to process some of this stuff. I think if we look organization-wide, maybe that's within the part of the organization that we control, whether that's a small team or wider. There's a process perspective, right? At some point, it's like process helps you. Like in Tradeshift now, we have quarter by quarter kind of rhythm to a lot of things, both product and with that also engineering, but also the business overall. And that gives a rhythm and the cadence, and you can start planning some stuff. And in the same way, set up, make sure you have schedules with your one-on-ones. Make sure that you have, your regular sync-ins with your immediate leadership team, or your team, have those structures help you out, right? And that hopefully can also take some of the need for the instant, sync gratification. Then the other thing I do is that I ignore stuff. There is, at the end of the day, there was only so many hours, there was only so many messages I could respond to or emails I could read, and if they're important enough, they'll resurface.
I had the moment in time when I had a 9-hour meeting. It was like some military leadership meeting, and we were not allowed to use look at our email or respond to anything. And then I realized that there were probably 3 to 5 fires that were burning while I was in that meeting, and I really I couldn't respond because I couldn't respond. And that moment caught me, and so somehow they got figured out. As important as I would like to think people that actually do this, and if you empower them, and if you actually tell them in advance that, you know, this would be a great thing for you to look at, they will probably go from that, or maybe they will make these fires stop. There's a lot of positives. So ignoring works, trying to figure out what would happen and who could you delegate it to, and who could actually maybe find some positive in like, dealing with a fire or a situation of some sort also works in probably a good way.
Yeah, so a lot of triage, letting fires burn as long as it's not burning down the whole country. What about stress? So they often say that in order to lead others, you have to lead yourself first. So how do you all deal with stress and your own personal psychologies when it can be pretty lonely at the top?
That's a tough question. I think you have to find time to decompress. So a personal hobby is great. You know, my family gives me just an enormous amount of de-stress time. So whatever works, but you have to find ways to kind of just move away from everything and find time to decompress. Otherwise, you know, you only have one life and stress can eat you up. So that's what I think.
What are you doing?
Knitting, I highly recommend it.
So it's basically a form of meditation for your meditative states.
Let's get to a 5-year and a 3-year-old do not necessarily help, by the way, on the stress. If they're hungry, that will not help. But I think that there's the personal stuff, like how do you deal with the decompression, and that's, you know, you got to figure that out by yourself. I think in your work life, there is, at least when you're on a growth path as a manager, you're kind of on a cycle of like, what am I doing? What is all this? I don't understand anything. I'm not able to like exert control over my environment or my career path or the trajectory or the strategy or oh my god, well, maybe, okay, I got it, yeah, full control, and then you got to go full circle again. And I think as you go around that, you got to make sure that you get those moments of like, okay, I feel like I think I know what I'm doing, right? And if at the end of the day you keep on being in the panic mode, or reactive mode completely, you need to take control or you will end up in this state.
Yeah, I highly recommend reading the Wikipedia page on burnout. There's 10 stages of medical burnout, and learn to recognize it yourself.
What are we usually in, right?
No, like 2 or 3. It's called. But I think it's just like in the headlines, like you have to put on your own mask for helping others. So, and that becomes more important the more people you're responsible for. So in closing, before we take questions from the audience, what's one thing you wish you'd known before starting out in this management career? What's one thing you wish you'd known before starting out in your management career?
That my job will change every 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
For me, it was not as my current job plus, but in a lot of ways, it's actually a different job.
I would say I've come to realize that a lot of my success depends on actually the team and how they are succeeding, and I wish that was called out before I started on my management career. So it's really not about me as much, it's about the team.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so how do you get your reports to give you honest, critical feedback so that you can improve as a manager?
One thing we do is we actually practice this as the whole organization, and we try to start small so it feels safe, it feels inconsequential, and with time, if you actually keep this up as cadence, you get to media more interesting things. But if your report has to judge you as an individual and the professional and everything else, they will probably say something along the lines of like, you're doing great, and that will be the end. And so like regular and small and safe probably is the best shot.
One technique that I've used is to have 360 feedback. So basically my peers, my reports, my manager, We use an internal tool that is built by Zenefits to give the 360 feedback. And then it's, that's a mechanism to use to get feedback from reports.
Yeah, I think that there's all the kind of systematic ways, the 360s, evaluations. We use a platform called eCommerce, where there's a lot of reviews.
You should use Zenefits.
I'll pass that on. Do you use Stretcher? No, I think the other thing is being authentic, and part of that is being vulnerable, right? And I think admitting that when you do something wrong, and I do something wrong very often, and be open about that, right? And sometimes also just owning your decisions that, look, I did something wrong, and I would probably do it again for whatever reason, and create a safe space in that, we can actually talk about things.
Yeah, I would add that, trust and vulnerability is the foundation, and we've been talking to a lot of companies over the last year, and it seems like the most common problem is an avoidance of conflict in many companies in tech. And if you've read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, like the avoidance of conflict is the second level to highly recommend the book. Another recommendation would be an everyone culture, so how to build a deliberately developmental organization, and much of that is about building deep feedback cycles, both up and down the hierarchies. Okay, this isn't a question, this is a statement. Democratic versus authority-based decisions. The 7 votes. So, how do you feel about democratic?
How we feel about democracy and like society, or no? I guess
our contentious discussion.
No national politics. So I think that it is our responsibility as leaders to distinguish between when one is the right mode and the other is the right mode. And I can say for our company, that has been going through a lot of growth and continues to. There are periods where democratic decisions will kind of give the best outcome, and then there are particular inflection points where we need to make bigger changes and at a pace where that becomes much more of a top-level type decision-making process.
How about you two?
I agree with this. I would also add that I'm a big fan of the idea of alignment, not necessarily agreement. And I find that if you try to get everybody to agree, you will be going in circles for a very long time. And being clear again about setting expectations and identifying who is responsible for the decision, and then allowing if you made this person responsible for the decision, you should give them the freedom to make the decision, and then just have them explain how they made it, get others to align. They don't necessarily have to agree. The person that you pick responsible for the decision, you have to make sure that they're able, willing, and understand what it is that they're responsible for. So that's also on you, making sure that you pick the one that can do it, and then others can have the feeling of like safety and freedom, and they can back off, and the decision is going to be made, and it's not going to be catastrophic. So that would add everything you said plus that qualifier.
Yeah, I completely agree that often consensus ends up being acquiescence, and people still disagree. They just give up. Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would just say that disagree but commit is a pretty key principle, because at the end of the day, we have to move forward on a decision that has been made, and you only have, certainly in startup land, you only have limited time to make certain decisions and move ahead. So once the decision has been made, it's important to fall in line.
Yeah, so we talked to a lot of companies that are using models like RACI, so who's responsible for the decision. Apple uses DRIs. And I think one of the nuances is probably like, what is authority? And authority doesn't necessarily come from the management hierarchy. So within an organization, there's multiple hierarchies, and someone might have the authority to make a decision who isn't in the management chain.
It could be competency based, like whoever has the most relevant person to make a decision.
All right, next question. Have you had a mentor or coach that helped you chart your path? And do you still look to others?
Yes, I've been fortunate to have not only one but many mentors, and I look to them for guidance for different parts of my career or profession. Absolutely.
I didn't have anybody who was like an official nominated mentor, but I do look for guidance from people, and I think everybody in my professional and personal circle, they have something to offer, they do something better than I do, or they've been in a situation, and so I really listen for that, and I find so much wisdom and so much better than any management book from the people that are around me. So very informal, but effective.
Yes. No, I mean, and I think yes to mentors and coaches and so on, but I also think I have a super close friend from I'm from Denmark. He's back in Denmark. We talk once in a while, but we have a very deep connection and really being and violating probably many NDAs, but having that one person to have that kind of connection with. I love the parenting and management teams related. If we do that, it's down the list.
I was going to say that I didn't have a mentor. I think that because I want to be a mentor for other people. I did have a coach who had a psychology background who was very meaningful in my management career. Alright, so we're going to skip one. Parenting and management team related. Any tips on leveraging one for the other to maximize the learning?
So for me, it's understanding what hunger, low blood sugar levels does to people. I think that's a big thing, and lack of sleep. And of course, you get that amplified in children. And also just that people are so different. Like our kids are super different, and so are people, and you need to give them also the space and the fluctuations. Like take a breath, step back, and let it.
So my daughter's in Montessori school, and their philosophy is trusting in the competency of the child, so not to help them too much. So I feel that carries over, trusting the competence of your own quick thoughts.
I find that management helps me coping as a parent, and vice versa. I think that I, to some degree, became a much better manager once I started applying some parenting techniques for toddlers to the team setting, and it really worked, and everybody was way happier. But I think part of it is exactly this, is how much do you trust, and you trust more, and you figure out, and you set expectations, and you have consistency, and so a lot of the things that you practice as a parent really help with management.
What percent of promotions to leadership is due to luck versus skill set? I had no idea what I was doing, and I learned leadership by trial by fire. It comes up a lot. I think the sad answer for this is a lot. Being in the right place at the right time, and this is not a very political answer, but I think a lot of people pattern match and choose people they recognize and make mind for them. I think that's why we struggle to have inclusivity and diversity at management levels. So I think it's incumbent on companies to create more rigorous rubrics around management and promotion, and think about how they're cultivating leaders within their organization.
Yeah, I think a lot of us became managers by accident or during the company growth or something. I think it's survivable, we're all here. I think we would have been so much better and would have gotten to a higher level of effectiveness so much faster if we had the training. So I highly recommend the training. I also think that if you have the opportunity and you didn't have the training, don't let that stop you. You will most likely regret it.
There's also a huge scarcity of talent, so if you focus on management as a craft, that will give you a lot of opportunities. Any advice for first-time managers?
Just practice the craft. There's a lot of resources available, mentorship, online, leadership programs. It's important to be resilient. There's going to be adversity, and I'd say trust not only yourself, your competency, but also your team.
We are actually right now doing an onboarding guide for new managers, and as part of that, I've asked people at different levels of management, from senior leadership to current managers, what is it that you wish you would know, would have known when you started? And there are different areas, but the two things that came up, and so I'm going to share them. One was prioritization of your time. So that is something that struck everybody, like caught them by surprise, and that was really, really hard until they figured out some sort of coping mechanisms, and the other one was communication. And so the fact that they have to communicate in a very different way than they had to when they were an individual contributor, and over-communicate and communicate at different levels to different people, and you have to figure out different ways of communicating, like that seemed to be a big area that changed for them.
I think you're going from a position, probably, if you're moving from an individual contributor to a management or leadership position, you no longer have direct control over the stuff, right? So your levers are other people, right? And people are not code. Even engineers that are hardcore are not code, even though they might think they're super logic and systems. They are people. And there are emotions, and there are hopes and dreams and aspirations, and whatever baggage everybody comes with, and you need to make a team work together, and that's that whole side of things. So part of that is, to your point about letting other managers be empowered to do stuff. You also need to empower your team to do stuff and not micromanage them, right? I mean, you are not the one making all the decisions. You need to give them the free space to actually execute it and do their stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, just learn about psychology, learn about your own psychology and psychology of others. And I can recommend leadership development programs that focus on psychology and philosophy-based training. I think we're out of time, so thank you very much for all your wisdom, and thanks for the questions.